It's all good. We'll call the meeting to order. It is Monday, June 10th of 2024. This is the Stoughton Plan Commission meeting, and we do have a quorum, and we are certified in compliance with open meeting laws. And the first item of business would be the minutes from May 13th. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll move to approve.
Motion by Bradford. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Jordan, second.
Oh, take Jordan.
Either one.
All right.
Oh, thanks, Tom.
All right. Second by Tillison. Any questions on the minutes? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Minutes carry. Next item, City Council Representative Report.
And it looks like at the May 14th council meeting, R77 and R78 of 2024 were approved. And at the May 28th council meeting, R81 and R82 of 2024 were approved.
All right.
That's it.
Thank you. And then we have staff report. Anything you want to report, Chris?
So staff report, I just wanted to talk about, I went through ARPA funding and requested a GIS person to start working through our data. I don't know how many people have been on to our website and looked at our current zoning. There are chunks of it missing. So in addition, we have two other contractors, essentially. We've got two other consultants that have done other aspects of our, in their PDFs. I'm hoping that we can get a GIS intern to start working on getting all of these up online and current and working. So I just wanted to give you guys the information. If you want to see kind of what we had done in other cities, I'm more than happy to show you, but I wanted to let you guys know that that was the direction we were moving, so.
All right. So that'll be going through, I think, finance and then council, I think, is where we're at, but it went through the committee of the whole last week. So any questions for Chris? All right, we'll go on to our business. We have a request to change zoning at 217 to 219 South 4th Street. And where would we like to start?
Go ahead and you can pull that report up right there.
Okay.
So this is, if you want to scroll down to the planner's report, somehow my blocks keep getting shifted over, but you can see right in the center is actually where the property is located. So the property is located at 217 South 4th Street. The building was originally built as a single family home, most likely in the 1920s. And at some point, the lower area was converted over to commercial space, with the upper floor being a residential unit. If it looks familiar, there's currently a conditional use permit located on it for a bed and breakfast that was issued in October of 2023, okay? So the landowner is requesting to rezone the property from central business to residential 10, MR10, to allow both upper and lower to be converted into a residential unit, so flat. The area is currently earmarked in the future land use as central business in the comprehensive plan, which recommends the following zoning districts as an appropriate use of land. It's the CB, MR10, MR24, and plan development. Okay. So the Plan Commission should take into consideration that this is an existing building that in some capacity has already kind of been converted into a 2-flat essentially, with the residential unit on the 2nd floor and the 1st floor as business. Further, in addition to the request being considered with the comprehensive plan, the adjacent property to the north is also MR10. I'm recommending the commission approve the request for the rezone on the property from central business to residential MR10 for the purpose of a 2-flat with the following conditions. Number 1, the city shall adopt an ordinance change in the zoning classification. Number 2 is the existing CUP 2023 to operate the the bed and breakfast on the site will be, essentially it's voiding it because of the change in zoning. So it's going to void that, so that's going to go away. Additional considerations for the landowner, it needs to be compliant with Uniform Dwelling Code. Please note that per zoning code, the dwelling unit type may not be split into additional residential units. As the current building sits, it currently does not meet minimum setback requirements. All improvements need to stay within that existing footprint. And then number three and number four is essentially approval by engineering, building inspection, fire inspection, any other city departments. And number four is conditions identified by the city staff and plan commission. And number five is the rezone request is subject to the final review and approval by the city council. So do you guys have any questions on that?
Of course, I have one.
What?
Do you know how many units they're proposing in each flat?
They can only have, it can only be a number of 2 units, that's it.
No, I meant as far as bedrooms. Do you
Oh,
know, like,
number
are
of
they
bedrooms?
2-bedroom? Or
No,
do you know
I don't know.
anything?
No.
Okay.
Chris, I had one question.
Sure.
In your, in the conditions that you set forward, just like the number 1 point, I just want to be clear about the timing on that. Do you mean that the city should undertake changing the ordinance, or would you like it a full adopted ordinance policy? Because that's like 2 months worth. That's like first readings, second readings, all of that. What?
I think the way that it reads in our code, and I've noticed, it's actually, like, if you get into our code currently, there's a list of every single zoning change, and I think that's where it's asking for that change essentially in there. The other thing too is that under number 1, I don't, I know that, so I'm gonna apologize ahead of time. This is one of those that Tim initially was at the wheel of. So I don't know what compliance they currently have in there to make it an actual 2-bedroom flat. In other words, yeah, there's certain things that you have to do for it to be a dwelling unit, separate, yada, yada. It has to meet those minimum.
They don't have a kitchen on the ground.
Right, and in entranceways, there's all of that stuff, and that's why I put in that number 1. It has to meet those requirements. So.
Yeah, it looks like Tim's on here.
Oh.
And I know at one point, there was a
there he
kitchen
is.
there, a commercial kitchen, when they had ice cream there at one point. So I don't know if that's relevant or not, but we'll let Tim speak to it.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Chris. So I think direct answer to the question, this, because it's a zoning change, will require approval of the council, or I'm sorry, approval of an ordinance by council. And my understanding, based on conference with the legal counsel, is that would take 2 readings. So that ordinance that is going to go to the city council will get 2 readings before it's approved. And let me know if that's not answering your question.
Nope, that does. Just that I didn't know what timeline that the property owner had with moving their project forward. I mean, I know this one has been a little bit kind of whiplash-like in changing from this to this to this. So I just didn't know what sort of time frame they were anticipating, but that it must be a 2-step ordinance process.
Yeah, we do have a public hearing for tonight, so I should
Yes.
probably close the meeting and open it up for a public hearing, just to see if anybody wants to speak. So we'll do that. Does anybody want to speak at the public hearing on this one? Okay, hearing none, we'll go back into the regular meeting. Are there any more questions on this one? So I think with all of our rezonings, we typically have a public hearing, it's an ordinance, and then it's a 2-step process. Now, the council could always waive the rules if they want, which takes a 2/3 vote there, but normally on a zoning, they wouldn't do that unless, there was a really good reason. I'm not even sure what that would be.
Yeah,
Somebody have
this
a
is
question? Go ahead.
Not a question, but a comment, and nothing new to anybody, but this seems like it's continuing to add to the demand for parking. And I know there's a tiny parking lot down there that stays full from what I see, and I go by there a lot constantly. So it's just the downtown area just seems to really cry out for some serious look at the parking. I know you guys are working on it, but it's
Yeah.
this is another exacerbating factor in my mind.
I think down there you have a couple things. Right now, it's owner occupied, so they're parking there. I think one of the reasons they're looking at possibly changing this is they might want to have 2 tenants. There's also commercial space, which the parking there is, I don't know, it's probably a little less consistent than if you had a resident. Chris has been walking downtown, I hear.
I walk downtown. I don't, this one, 2-unit, 1 bedroom to 2, it's currently an Airbnb. I don't know that we'll see an increase necessarily in parking, from the increase, because it's basically, I can't give my opinion, but I always have reservations with switching houses from single family to, a flat or whatnot, especially when the conversion comes in. This, I started doing research. This thing looks like it's been in some fashion converted since probably the 30s or 40s. Yeah, so I wouldn't see that there would be necessary. I mean, there's going to be that particular area with the conversion next door and the Opera House. I think, but I don't see this. It's the same count, essentially, for lack of a better way of saying it. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. We are looking at parking downtown. Parking, I will be talking about parking till I die. So.
Yeah, so currently we are running what we're calling a pilot on Water Street. We removed the overnight parking restriction. There was a 3 to 5 a.m. And what we're finding is there's a few vehicles, at least initially, that used to park in the municipal lot. Now they're parking on the street overnight. So we had a meeting, was it last week, with Chris and Director Aber and Police Chief Jenks to talk about where we're going to go. And I think that's one of many projects that you have.
Yeah. I'm really hoping when we bring on, hopefully we do get approval on the GIS, but the intern. But this was a project that I actually had our GIS intern when I was in the city of Whitewater do. She walked all of the streets, documented all of it, put it into, into mapping systems, and then we looked and started recognizing, and we made changes based on those maps. So.
All right, looks like Commissioner Tillison has his hand up.
Thank you, Mayor. I know this building does have one off-street parking spot behind it. I think it'd be a tight squeeze for two vehicles, but if I remember correctly, the upstairs units, 2 bedroom, 1 bath, and then like you said, the downstairs used to have the ice cream shop in it, so that's that'd have to, it would be a work to do it, but I'm sure the building owners know the process they're getting into.
All right, thank you for sharing that. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so you're looking for a recommendation tonight from the commissioners?
Yes.
And it looks like, let's see. So we have it as a resolution. We might want to specify it's actually an ordinance,
Okay.
right?
Yes.
Okay. Which is pretty simple to do.
Mayor, if I may?
Yep.
So the reason, we actually did this on purpose to be a resolution before the Plan Commission, and essentially, again, waiting on whatever other conditions may carry forward as recommendations. The document that goes to the City Council would be in the form of an ordinance.
Okay. All right, that's fine. It's a little different than what I'm used to, but it works. So if that's how we're going to do it going forward, then we
That's
just
fine.
want to be consistent with whatever we do. Either way, it's going to be an ordinance by the time it gets to the council. So the commissioners really don't have authority to pass ordinance anyway, do they?
We would give a recommendation, essentially.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess we're looking for a motion on the resolution.
I'll move to approve this rezone.
All right. Is there a second? Second by Bradford. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? That motion carries. Let's see. All right. Item number 8 is the request for an amendment to the Meadows at Kettle Park West General Development Plan, and a recommendation for City Council on this one as well. You want to kind of kick it off? It looks like we have Connors here too.
Yeah, sure, and I will most likely probably, well, this should be the 1005 Stoughton Avenue is where we should be at.
Oh, am I looking at the wrong agenda?
We can go to Kettle Park
That's-
if you want.
That's what I,
Okay, sorry about that.
all right.
Okay,
Let's
okay.
do that. We won't make Connor go last tonight. That's usually the
Okay.
tradition though.
okay.
All right.
So yeah, go ahead and yep, we got it pulled up. So the property is located in the Meadows development at Kettle Park West, Block 1, Lot 1 through 26, and Block 2, Block 7, and Block 8. The proposed is 92 lots with alleyway parking in the rear. Okay, so this was at the Planning Commission in June of 2022, and then it went to council meeting on June 28th and July 12th of 2022. And so what it was is it was the zoning district with, again, that plan development over the top of it. During the plan development, the following flexibilities were granted. Reducing the rear yard setback of the alley curbway from 25 feet to 22 feet, and reducing the front lot setback of 20 feet to 14 feet from blocks 1, lots 1 through 13, and block 2, 1 through 17. And then the second one was reducing the rear yard setback to the front of the alleyway from 25 feet to 22 feet for blocks, block 1, lot 14 through 26, and block 2, lots 18 through 38. Okay, so this specific area, the developer is requesting an amendment to the Meadows at Kettle Park West General Development Plan, the GDP, amending the underlying zoning of the alleyway lots to be revisited from SR-6 to TR-6. This would change the allowed construction from the single-family homes to a zero lot line duplex. It should be noted that the request, so essentially what's happening, just like that, when we changed the zoning on that last one, the conditional use permit went away, right? If we're changing this, then we're revisiting that whole section, not like the overall development, but this specific area that's getting rezoned. We need to then, like, the general plan development goes out the window and then we have to re-adopt it. Is that making sense?
Just want to clarify.
Yes.
So that means that the setbacks and whatnot that we granted or proposed go away.
Right. So they're requesting the zoning from single family to essentially a duplex, and then the developer is requesting the following flexibilities. I apologize, I don't know why I'm not talking great tonight, so I feel like that's every night here. Through flexibilities through the GDP, in addition to the rezone from TR6 with the underlying zoning. Okay, so now I'm going to go through these. This was what was requested per the application that we got. So increasing the maximum gross density of 6 dwelling units per acre to 6.5 per acre. That's number 1. Number 2 is the minimum lot area is 5,000 square feet for each dwelling unit. The developer is requesting a minimum lot area of 4,000 square feet per dwelling unit. The minimum front of street side lot lines to the house is 20 feet and then 15 for open wall front porch. The developer is requesting a front yard setback of 14 feet with 6 feet from the open roof porch on the following locations, and then it lists them. Number 4 is the side yard setback from the lot lines of the house to the attached minimum garage is 20 feet and is 0 foot along the common wall. So it's on 20 feet on the one side and then you got a 0 lot line because it's a duplex, right? The developer is requesting a side yard setback of 6 feet from the lot line or 14 feet between principal structures. Number 5 is the developer is requesting the following rear setback. Essentially what happened is he asked for the rear setback, but per the underlying zoning district, the minimum setback requirement for the TR is 20 feet, and it's really unclear why the developer requested a GDP for something greater than the minimum requirements. Additional information should be required. Number 6 was the same thing. The developer is requesting a GDP accessory structure side yard setback of 4 feet and less within the perimeter of the approved fence line. Again, that meets minimum requirements. It's unclear. We need more information. Accessory structure rear side setback, 4 feet, and then it goes into that as well. Let's see, per the underlying zoning district, minimum rear setback is, in the TR, is 20 feet from the principal. It's unclear why the developer is asking for it. So then number 8 is the current minimum landscape, the LSR per ordinance is 50%, and the developer is requesting a landscape surface ratio of 30%. Number 9, 10, and 11, I have them listed, but I'm going to skip over them. Essentially what it is the infrastructure that is put in currently, and it would have been something that was essentially reviewed and approved by Public Works. Those are listed, and it says through the review and approval, it just needs to go and be okayed through Public Works. I don't feel like we necessarily have the authority on those 9, 10, and 11, so it has to do with utilities and Public Works. Okay, so here's the thing with land developments, and this is what if they're asking for this, these are the requirements, especially when I go through the SIP that I'm looking for from you guys, and in additional things if you want to add it. So the Plan Commission should take into consideration that plan development zoning is used to describe a type of development and the regulation process that permits a developer to meet overall community density and land use goals without being bound by the existing zoning requirements. While a plan development allows for flexibility, the city can ask for additional project design standards that protect public health and safety and to assure design quality and conformance to the overall plans. To ensure that the development is a higher design quality, the Plan Commission should consider adding the following architectural requirements as part of the PD. So one, I wanted to spell out the minimum parking requirements. Again, you're going to see this echoed. Minimum number of off-street parking spaces required on the lot including the garage and all designed parking surfaces is 2.5 per 3 or more bedrooms or 2 per 2 bedrooms. Number 2 is minimum design standards. With the reduction in side yard setback, the side windows on the adjacent units should not line up because there's like 6 feet from is what's being requested, or 14 feet overall. Yeah, so it's like, we don't want to open a window to reach over and grab another window. They need to be offset, essentially is what that's asking. Front door access should be placed on separate access points and not located on the same porch. So they're not like opening the door and hitting each other. B, side-by-side duplex must not be mirror image. Each unit should consist of changes in material and appropriate architect detail that add scale to the long walls. This will include different facade elevations. Dwelling units must have different roofline configurations. The same color and design cannot be closer than 5 dwelling units from each other. I think that most of them are 6 or 7, and this will break up each section of those like overall duplexes. C, dwelling shall have separate covered entranceway for each dwelling unit with a minimum dimension of 4 feet by 6 feet for the front like entryway area. And D, unless the duplex is located on a double frontage lot, corner lots, or like a corner lot, no door may be located on the side yard of the proposed building. And one access door may be located in the front and one in the rear of the proposed unit. Essentially with the setbacks, there is not room for egress on the side. So the front and the rear, like we can't have doors located on the side yards of the, setback area.
So if they have a garage, you wouldn't allow a side door on the side of the garage?
They can't, really, I actually was talking to our building inspector about it, and it's so close that it could be problematic, let's say. Okay. Does that make sense? Sure. So you could have it like, first of all, these are rear yard entranceways, but you could have it going out the side door. You could have a side door and then the garage door or whatnot, but you can't have it coming out the side unless it's a corner lot, because it's questionable that you could get the egress that you would need there. Okay, due to the smaller footprint of the sites, all proposed dwelling units should have a basement. This is for, the amount of living space. Number 4 is approval by engineering, building inspector, fire inspector, and other city departments, and any other conditions identified by the city staff or the planning commission. Okay, so those are my recommendations.
All right, are there any initial questions? Otherwise, Connor's here and he can certainly try to address some of the questions or some of the recommendations that were in Chris's report. What would you like to do?
Yes.
You said we go back to 0 when we go, this is like a whole new project, is that right?
This
Well,
particular-
let's say we lose here's my thing.
Right.
Are we gonna actually get a plan with landscaping and everything else so we can actually see what they're doing for these residents? Because right now, my gut feeling is that this is going just like the thing was going, they're just, I'm for 0 lot line.
Right.
My kids lived in it for a while and stuff, I get it. And they help with housing shortage.
Yeah.
But I'm just concerned.
So that's a good question, and I kind of wish I would have specified on here, but it has to come back for an SIP, right? It has to. So that's the first thing, and I'm sorry, I should have put that, but.
I would have had the question in.
Yeah, so this is something to consider when we're talking about this. Essentially went from lots with single-family homes to duplexes. In theory, the density is not increasing on these. So that's the first thing. It's really, it was interesting when I was reviewing this initially because the minimum lot size for a single-family home is like 4,000 square feet or something like that in this particular zoning district. And I was just like, how did this not, initially I was like, how did this not get caught? Oh, because it is 4,000 square feet in that particular zoning district. And minimum lot requirements is 5,000 feet for duplex. Quite frankly, having a 0 lot line in theory should give more room on the side of the non-zero lot line, but yeah, so just something to think about. That wasn't probably helpful, but
Any other questions from commissioners?
Can we ask Chris why they switched? I just.
Oh, sure. Connor, you can come on up.
I mean Connor, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, it was a C.
Yeah, just push the button there and the red light will come on. There you go.
Perfect. Hear me all right? Oh, feedback. There we go. Thank you very much. Connor Kearney here for Development Group, and thank you very much, Chris, for setting the stage here and going through the application. Happy to answer any questions. Did want to make a few quick points of clarification, albeit changing the zoning and having to revisit a lot of the items that were previously approved. To clarify, this application, the only thing we're aiming to change is the ability to have 0 lot line duplexes. The criteria that was previously approved, if a builder came forth and said, we're able to build single-family homes on the alley lots as platted, we wouldn't have come back to change anything. It was because of a builder's specific product type. So you guys are probably thinking, boy, they like to change their minds quite a bit. we really just pivoted based on the interest of a builder and an interested party. So the lots were originally designed for Veridian. So we had Veridian home specs, setbacks, the plans that they were looking at doing for this project. The plans changed for Veridian, and we remarketed the lots at that time. I believe you're aware of the June amendment. That was on behalf of Lennar Homes. And the setbacks, by changing the front and rear, those were in response to Lennar's specific home product. In June of 2022, the mortgage rate started increasing and construction costs skyrocketed. That prohibited Lennar from building standalone single-family homes on those alley lots because the price point would actually compete with what they're doing on the single-family homes just next door. So at that point, it took some innovative thinking and creativity to approach it in a different manner, and along came D.R. Horton. So D.R. Horton has a product, and Lennar has a similar product, but D.R. Horton approached us on this opportunity, and they're very excited about the opportunity to build these duplexes. They're building them in Wisconsin, so you could look, if you search D.R. Horton, Union Grove is the development that they're currently building these products in, that you can see, and it's a product that's focused on attainability. A first-time home buyer, I'm sure you can all appreciate the fact that in Dane County it's very difficult to find any new construction that starts with a 3. That is the goal of D.R. Horton. These brand new homes will start with a 3 is their goal. You can look at what they're listing them in Union Grove. I believe they're starting at $325. Now, I don't believe that's with Dane County labor and the pricing locally. I'm not sure that that number is attainable, but it is their goal to have these start with a 3. So when we think about design criteria and architectural restrictions and requiring basements, the price point of those homes, it won't make them attainable. D.R. Horton's mission is to get a step in for a first-time home buyer or a price point that's attainable. So our hope was, rather than revisiting the entire zoning book, was to focus and say, all right, we'll steady on the way as we originally had the GDP approved, but adding that ability to do the 0 lot line duplexes. And as Chris stated, by constructing the duplexes on the shared lot line, your distances between buildings are actually going to be greater. So the variations between windows, you could have had that scenario happen previously when you had single-family homes all stacked next to each other standalone. But now by creating them and having straddle a lot line, you're creating a larger buffer. And Exhibit D, the utility plan to the application, actually shows those home footprints on that overlaid on there, so you can see the variation and the greater distance between the adjacent properties. So did want to clarify a few items and give a little bit of background on kind of why we're here and having the
When
discussion.
you come back to us, you've already said you're gonna come back to us again on this. Is it only gonna be setbacks that you're asking us for? Are you gonna be asking us to build without basements? Are you gonna be asking, I mean, what is it that you already know that you're gonna be asking for?
So to clarify, they're asking for 0 lot line, and in order to do the 0 lot line, they are changing it from one zoning to another, and that's why there is a significant list of variations.
Those things that you read off?
Yes,
Correct.
And so those will have to happen,
yes.
all right.
And in addition to years past, we've approved plan developments without having design criteria, and I am
know what we've
asking
done.
you guys for those, because when we get the SIP, I need direction. And so I think that those are important.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Connor? So out of the things that were identified in the planner report, is there anything that you think was going to be a deal breaker for you?
I can relay that the product does not have basements. This is a slab-on-grade product. It's focused on attainability. Design criteria, it's a production-style product. It is a nice product. We can do research. We can pull these up. We'd encourage you to look at the Union Grove example. But the whole goal is creating affordability on the ownership side of things. And by adding restrictive design criteria, by requiring basements, I can tell you with certainty that that would be a deal killer. We have the adjacent single-family homes. If someone wants a custom single-family home at the $500,000 price point or up, but the whole goal was to offer a product here that is attainable for a larger pool of buyers.
I have the change to the landscape surface ratio seems considerable. So I guess I've got some concerns about that. Even though I understand, different footprint and everything like that, but this seems like a pretty large percentage change.
And to clarify, it's actually been improved upon with this proposal from the current zoning. So the TR6 zoning requires the 50%. We're asking to go to the 30% to allow that flexibility. The current zoning has that 30%. In reality, we're actually going to have more pervious space because of the shared efficiencies and the shared wall, the duplexes, the open space between them. So in theory, if there was going to be single-family homes built on all 92 of these lots, it would have more impervious space than the current plan is showing.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification.
Anybody else else have any thoughts or questions? You look like you're reaching for it.
I'm just feeling that this change is pretty significant as far as like the overall feel of that neighborhood, and as we've been working through and getting this to come to fruition, that this is not exactly what we envision this neighborhood to include. I'll just say I think if you get this into council, that you're going to have some pretty serious pushback on this, because it just does not fit the initial vision of it. You know, we know it's been a difficult process over years.
And to clarify, the original vision being the higher density multifamily product?
Well, I mean, because you'll be building multifamily eventually to the southeast, or to the southwest of that. So to flip this to having more multifamily character, or the twin home, or however you want to classify that, non-single family homes, you know, this whole development, we had an idea, a vision of it to be a primarily single-family unit development with the multifamily on the southwest corner. Right.
Yeah.
And my apologies if I didn't clarify, these would be single-family fee simple ownership, not multifamily.
I get that. But it's the look. That's what.
Has there been any conversation about maybe just doing a few sections instead of all 92?
There hasn't been. D.R. Horton's got a specific development plan and product that they'd like to execute here. So to mix it up, their system is based on efficiencies. So to carve up certain areas and restrict some, I think that would go against the efficiencies that they're able to use to deliver an affordable product.
I mean, when I look at it, I see, you know, some of the exceptions, they vary depending on the block. I'm going to call them blocks. I don't know if that's the proper term. And I'm just thinking that maybe there's some areas that might be better than others for this product, but not necessarily the whole thing. You know, I'd rather see some single family sprinkled in and integrated. It might be personal preference, but you know, I think there's also a demand for that as well. I don't know what that price point looks at, and I don't know, you know, how Lennar would feel about that as well, but it just seems like, you know, all 92 seems like a lot. Have they specified like a timetable that they would potentially build them?
There's out of the improved lots, there's 70 of them out of the 92. I think the remaining on the southern half there would be a future phase. So there's 70 that are pad ready for construction. Assuming we're able to navigate the approval to allow the duplex product, I think they would want to begin construction as soon as possible, yet this calendar year.
So the ones to the south, are those the ones that have the deed restrictions on them?
Those are part of phase 3, and I believe that would be when the Oak opening connection is made. Those lots we would pursue. So the timing of that would have to be figured out with the Oak opening connection in phase 3.
Yeah, I'm thinking, at least, I don't know, from the council's perspective, they would rather see that sooner than later. And I think they would take more comfort knowing that that connection was going to be made now and not, you know, have that kicked down the road even further.
Yeah. Definitely. We'd like to see it moved along quicker too. I think the TID project plan specifies that work occurring in 2026, I want to say. So in a perfect world, we'd move that up D.R. Horton would like to move quicker and build homes quicker. So if we're able to accelerate that, that would be great.
Do they have a single-family home product?
Yes, they do. And when looking at a market, an expansion market, they have to have multiple sites, multiple product types for the expansion to make sense. They need a critical mass. So this would be, in this market, D.R. Horton's first foray into Dane County. And I think it's worth noting that out of all of Wisconsin, the history of the state, D.R. Horton and Lennar have not built in the same community. The first time in history would occur in the city of Stoughton. They have the Union Grove development, like I mentioned, and across the nation, Lennar and D.R. Horton develop adjacent to each other in different communities, and it's aimed to offer different price points to the consumer. But that has never happened in the history of the state of Wisconsin. This would be the first opportunity to do so. So I think they're excited, they'd like to move forward, and they would look at additional product, additional markets. They're standalone, single family, they have multiple lineups, no different than Lennar. So I think it's a benefit and a tribute to the community for having their interest.
Yeah, I guess what strikes me as being a little bit different is normally when we get to this point, we've met with the builder, in this case, D.R. Horton.
Yep.
We have multiple designs of the products that they're building. They don't really seem to be that accessible, at least not on their website.
Sure.
So we really don't even have a feel on how this could look.
Sure.
Even if we were to recommend moving forward with what Chris has specified in her report, I think a visual would be helpful.
Yeah.
Because right now, we have a plat.
Right, and I think
we have a lot of numbers and a lot of different
right.
asks, and we don't really see what a unit even looks like.
Right. Yeah, and they would love the opportunity to have that discussion. So I think up until now, there's been a certain level of confidentiality with them looking at a new market. A lot of the same builders work with the same labor force, with the same construction procurement process. So they wanted to keep things as confidential as possible, but we're at the point they would welcome a discussion, talk about their product. We did include an elevation in the memo, in our application of one of the units, but they have much more detailed plans, exhibits, photos, even an opportunity to tour one of their existing units in Union Grove. I think they would host, they would do all of the above.
This is when I ask, what's the pleasure of the commission? Commissioner Farrell.
Just more of a rambling comment, I guess, but if I remember back to when I first went through the comprehensive plan, and I actually read it, which was exciting. But I remember, I think it might have been a community comment that said that basically, the community wanted to maintain Stoughton primarily as a single-family residence, city. And I still don't have a grasp on the numbers, the data, what percentage of dwellings in the city is single family versus other than that. But I can understand that need, obviously. I mean, we're fortunate enough to live in a single family, but I also see a cry for more housing. So there seems to be this tension there with the market, and the prices that they are right now are insane for single family. There's this tension that I think we need to perhaps wrestle with as to that overarching desire to be a single family community, but also provide some market for younger families that just look at a single family and go, there's no way we can afford this. So sort of a rambling comment more than a question.
I'm going to make a comment from a realtor's perspective. You're talking 92 units. You're saying there's 325 where they are now. Stoughton, we're probably then talking in the 380s minimum. And I will tell you that it is extremely difficult, even in our squeezed market right now, to sell a home without a basement. That's just bottom line. People want to have a basement. They want to have it for storage. They want to have it for safety. you know, going along with zero lot, to be able to look at homes with no basements at 380 something, which I believe Magnolia has basements, and that's kind of where we're, and I think there's another project that's on right now that's smaller, I mean, under 400's
So
projecting.
some of the developments in Magnolia don't have basements, but it's due to the water table there, not
But there's-
because of,
there are
yes.
and there aren't.
Exactly, yeah, it's there is documentation on why those units do not
But
have
am
basements.
I correct in what my information is that we do have some under 400 that do have basements in Magnolia? Or projected to be under 400 if you want to.
I don't know off the top of my
Okay.
head, but I do know that in Magnolia, some of the lots on the southern
And
portion.
those have property,
Yeah, and it
They're not
has
zero
more to
level.
do with the water table than,
yeah. It's a construction issue.
yes, yes.
So I guess my feeling, and that's where I'll put it, is my feeling right now, is that as a Stoughtonite and somebody who chose to move here, not born and raised here, is that even though I was looking at a cost-effective housing selection, and a lot of my clients are looking for that as well, what I'm seeing here, well, that was up there, okay, you know, just would not be a place I'd necessarily want to move as a single person, okay, who doesn't need a big property. So, I mean, that would be something I'd be drawn to. But without basements, at the price point you're saying they'd probably be at, I think we're giving away the farm if we go to zero where they have no property, no basement. And they're still paying what they actually, right now at least, can get in Stoughton with some property and a possibility of a basement. Just from the real estate perspective, nothing else that, I'm not sure that they could sell all 92 of them.
That was one thing that I wanted to know about, was what, kind of, from your realtor perspective, like what product is moving?
Yeah, I mean, new homes, I mean, you know, to move into a new home for under 400 is, you know, looks like wow. But when you get no property, so you can't do a fence, so you can't do pets, or if you have a small kid, you know, you've got an alley out back with traffic. And I actually sold one of these in Plainfield, Illinois. And, you know, it was a nice development, they landscaped beautifully and everything else, but the only people that wanted to move in there were singles and newlyweds. Once they had kids, they moved out,
Right.
even though some of them were 3-bedroom, because of safety issues, close traffic, not enough parking, just a lot of issues like that. And they had basements. So, you know, I just think there's a lot of things that if we do it to zero, and I'm not opposed to that, like I said, I think that is a cost savings. But when you take away other things, and we haven't seen a plan of what they're gonna look like, how they're landscaped, they could be a beautiful community for singles or, you know, newlyweds or even downsizers like me. But when I look at the plan right now and no basements, I'm not sure I could sell those effectively at almost a $400,000 price point.
I guess I'd like to know whether DHI would be, if they're willing to have a mixed set of property, if they're just all in on these 92 being these zero lot line twin homes, or whether they're willing to mix up the units a little bit, or, so I mean, I think there could be some possibilities where not all would be the twin home, but, you know, it was a struggle to get us to even go along with the alley loaded homes to begin with. That was a hard sell straight up. So that's again where I'm saying that you're gonna get some council members that are really gonna push back on that, because it was hard enough to even sell them on the alley loaded product. If they were willing to maybe work a little bit and get some sort of a mixed type development or mixed set of blocks there, then I think we might be able to work on something. But I would say as it stands, I wouldn't see it with a lot of success.
Sure. And we had a lot of similar questions for D.R. Horton too, is we're not home builders, so purely developers. We trust our home building partners on their guidance on the market, what they're seeing. It's their capital that's building the homes, and I would highly doubt that any other home builder in the country, other than Horton or Lennar or Pulte, a lot of these bigger groups use the most market data that they have. They wouldn't expand into a new market if they didn't think a home would sell. Regarding the basement topic, certainly more marketable with basements. We couldn't agree more. But at a certain point, that home buyer wants 4 walls and a roof, and they are willing to forego certain amenities to get that. You know, I know it's not. My personal opinion is, as someone maybe looking for a first-time home buyer, empathizing with a first-time home buyer, the ability to enter the market is just so difficult right now. The affordability is, and getting that attainability in place to allow someone to move into a home for the first time, or it starts at this level. It starts at the zoning level to create that attainability and that affordability. I saw a stat at the end of 2022, there was a national housing shortage. They estimated around 2.8 million homes. At the end of 2023, that grew to 7.8.
It's terrible out there, and there really is a squeeze, okay? I'm not saying there isn't. I'm just saying that within Stoughton, we are talking about Stoughton, okay? Could I sell these in Sun Prairie? Yeah. Could I sell these in Monona? Possibly. Could I sell all of these in Stoughton? No.
Your Horton's telling us they can't.
Hey, I'm being honest with you.
Yeah, no,
And
I
I think I understand what you're saying. The big companies, they go in Dane County. They look at Dane County information.
Right.
They cannot do that if they're building in Stoughton, and I'm sorry, but, you know, I've been selling for 40 years on and off in different places around the United States. This is the most unique place I've ever sold, because Madison, Sun Prairie, everybody, Edgerton, Oregon, you know, they're very different markets, and a builder can't come in and just assume that a product that they could sell up here, they can sell down here. It's not like Northern Virginia, okay, or Maryland. I know some of these builders have been in those places. Very different market, very different market. So I would just say that they need to take a look and maybe do a little research right here if they're gonna build here.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'd encourage a direct conversation with them to ask those questions. I don't want to speak on their behalf, but
I'd be happy to talk to them.
I think that would be great, because I think they've been doing a lot of Stoughton market research, and it takes a lot of capital and a lot of work to expand into a new market, open an office, open a presence, open labor force, hire all new employees. I'd encourage a conversation with them.
Any idea of the square footage on these?
They have a few different models. I don't want to misspeak, but that's one I'll let them comment on, and I can follow up via email. We'll get the exact products, exact square footages, finish schedules, and we'll send all that.
Yeah, I just feel like there's really not a lot here to work with. You know, like I said in the past, usually when we're at this point, we have some schematics or some examples of something, and here we have one picture, and even the picture based on the planner's recommendation would not be acceptable because of the porch. And that's just off the top of my head. I'm sure there could be others. So, you know, I guess I would encourage you to see if they at least want to have an initial conversation with city staff so we can learn more about it. We do have a public hearing set up for 2 weeks from tomorrow night at the city council.
Sure.
I'm kind of feeling like, and I don't want to speak for everybody, I'm kind of feeling like I'm hearing that you guys aren't ready to make a recommendation, at least not to support it.
I'm not ready for that.
You're not ready for that?
Nope.
So I kind of feel like, you know, we go ahead and have the public hearing at city council, but more than likely it would come back to this body in July for a recommendation, and then it might have to go back to council again. It's going to need a couple readings anyway, because we're looking at changing the zoning on this as well. So that would be my suggestions for what it's worth. If anybody else has anything I'm sure Connor would love to hear it now.
Mostly just to get the willingness of, instead of just a one-size-fits-all for the whole thing, something that would be a little bit more, maybe we can blend it into the neighborhood a little bit better.
Just a lot of units that are, yeah, a lot of units of that type.
And I think part of the challenge is, we've kind of evolved into the zoning that's there. And initially, it probably wasn't a huge deal, but now that all the utilities are underground, it would be really difficult to change lot lines and things like that, because now we'd have to discontinue underground utilities, which means we're tearing up new roads. So we're kind of in a position where I think plat-wise, it's kind of the way it's going to have to be. Now, there might be some opportunity where if we got creative, where you could basically have one home and use two plats. We did that out at Nordic, and we used the second plat for the sprinkler system. So you might be able to do some creative things like that. But that would all be subject to approval. But I'm just throwing ideas out there at this point.
Yep.
So going forward, just generally speaking, if there is a plan development, I want it spelled out what we will be requiring in that plan development. And that includes design standards, because this is a visible area. Just because we want affordable housing doesn't mean, we want it to look nice. This is a gateway area for your development. You are gonna want it to look nice, right?
for sure.
Even, there's nothing wrong with a duplex versus a single family home. I don't think anybody's disputing that, but if we're allowing for planned developments because we're allowing for smaller lot lines and and less trees planted and different setbacks, I want it spelled out what we are gonna ask those developers for, so they can incorporate that into their plans when they come to the SIP. And this is going to be how it's gonna be going from now on here. So just forewarning,
That's good.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think that'll be good, not only for
Yeah.
us, but for the developers. Last thing you want to do is think you have a deal, and then you come in here and we're like, wow, we want to see this, that, and the other thing. You'd probably like to know that ahead of time.
Right.
So that's our
Right.
goal, is
Right.
to get ahead of it for you.
Yep.
If not for this project, for the next one. All right, anything else? So at this point, I don't think we're going to take any action on this one tonight, unless somebody wants to make a motion.
Do you guys want to give Connor a direction to go in this?
What do you mean by direction?
So for you guys to start considering this, what would you like to see him bring? If he wants to bring this back, is there any, we would like to see plans, we'd like to see that kind of stuff. That's what I'm hearing from you guys?
Yeah, plans, examples, the potential to not have a unified development, so that it might be, we might mix it a little bit, or maybe kind of buffer some of them with, like if against the single family homes, if you did the single family alley loaded and then did the zero lot lines on the lot, or 7 and 8?
Okay.
That are the big ones. I think it's 1 and 2 and 7 and 8 are the bigger ones. So if you maybe could just kind of like, because we're already going to have multifamily, apartment buildings that are behind that, apartment buildings that are going to be to the southwest. So I think that zero lot line could blend in a little bit better.
Okay.
And then you wouldn't have, if all of a sudden you're going to put a whole row of zero lot lines right next to the $500,000 single families, I think that they would be upset about that.
All right, do you have any questions? Do you have any questions for us?
Aside from the feedback and what to bring back, I think that's been super helpful. We'll get as much information as we possibly can. We'll encourage direct conversations with D.R. Horton. A lot of it's getting comfortable with the new product, and we totally understand that. We want to do things right. We want to make sure everyone's comfortable with the process. So less questions. Just wanted to thank you for your time, your consideration, and we'll be sure to get all the details that you need to feel comfortable with the project.
All right, appreciate that. All right, have a good night.
Yep, you as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay, we're at item number 9, which is 1005 Stoughton Avenue, CSM and SIP. You want to start this one, Chris, or? I know
Okay.
Tim worked on it as
Yes,
well.
this is the one. Tim, are you still there? Tim's left us.
No, he's
No,
there.
I'm here. I'm here.
So I'll speak very briefly about it, but Tim was actually the one that had been working with this group, I think even prior to me being on board.
Yes.
So kind of feel like if this should be discussed more by Tim. But property is located at 1005 South Stoughton Avenue. The property is zoned plan development, GDP plan development, which would allow a twin home 2-unit and with an SIP. The zoning changes were approved on February 12th, 2024 at the Plan Commission meeting and Common Council meeting on the 13th and then the 27th. And I'm gonna just talk a little bit about this. So one of the things that we found about the time that I started was the 0 lot line for duplexes can be reviewed and approved. So the CSMs can be reviewed and approved by city staff. And so you guys aren't looking at the CSMs for the 0 lot lines because it can be done by me, which it's pretty obvious what's going on there if it's a duplex and a 0 lot line CSM. So Tim, would you like to go ahead and speak about this?
Sure. Thanks, Chris. So, right, the main thing to point out, obviously, is the GDP was established just a few months ago, back in February, and the applicant, Habitat for Humanity of Dane County, is now bringing forward their SIP to essentially build what was approved as part of their GDP. However, the specifics, in this case, of the structure are included in the packet. The materials for the detailed information begins on page 8. In staff's opinion, much of the information that is in the SIP is consistent with the GDP. Staff did want to point out one thing, Mayor Swadley, if you could pull up page 23 of the packet, and this has some of the elevations. I would point out that the product, this twin home product, is not something I've seen before. I think it's a great example of alternate architecture and Habitat trying different products. You can see the building itself has some different architectural features, some different changes in the facade planes that create a lot of visual interest. But one of the items that at least just pointed out for discussion has to do, and I think it's the next page. Yeah, right there. Perfect. So the way this twin home is oriented, the front doors and garages will be oriented to the west facade along Stoughton, and then the north facade of the building will be oriented toward East Broadway. And that facade is what you see on the left side of your screen right now. Again, that's, I believe, on page 23 of your packet. But staff simply wanted to point this out because of that prominence of that 2-story facade at that corner, just to have a bit of discussion about what that facade looks like. I would simply say, at least from a planning perspective, it looks a little certainly different. Difference not necessarily bad, but it looks, I'll say, unbalanced. And when you look at the floor plan, and I believe I saw Gary representing Habitat in the audience, so maybe he can speak to this. But it looks like there are some vaulted ceilings, perhaps in the bedroom on the second floor, and perhaps as you're going up the stairwell. But just again, something to consider. Again, not necessarily a recommendation per se by planning staff, but that was the only thing that jumped out really that you may want to include some discussion about additional windows or more or larger windows, for example, on that facade. But other than that, as pointed out, the submittal is generally consistent with the GDP and the resolution, along with the conditions. And as Chris pointed out, one of them speaks to the approval and recording of the CSM are included in that resolution. This body, the Plan Commission, would be the final stop for this development if you approve it this evening. So I think that's all I had.
All right, thanks, Tim. And then we do have representatives here from Habitat. If you want to speak to it, Gary.
I think the mic is on, right? I think there's a couple architects virtually too. They could probably speak to that, what Tim just mentioned, a little better than we could. So, Sam, are you out there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So specifically on that side, we weren't necessarily planning on having any vaulting on the interior, but what we were trying to do was get roof planes that face towards the south for potential solar panels if we get donations and or if the future homeowners wanted to add that on there. So we're trying to get as much of that southern solar exposure onto that roof plane. And why that kind of top portion of that, it looks kind of bare, is because we're trying to minimize cost of construction and using a truss system for the roof structure. So you wouldn't actually have any windows or anything up there because you would just be looking into empty, unfinished attic space.
Okay, Tim, did that answer your questions?
Let me get my mic on, thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, it did. However, again, I think this is more a design question for discussion, conversation by the plan commissioners. Again, it's not necessarily, from my perspective, you need to do something about it as a recommendation to the plan commission, but at least it caught my eye as I would say, from a balancing of a facade, a somewhat abnormally large plane of just flatness, I'll say. But and maybe the architects can think of some other elements, and I don't know if like a band board somewhere near to help break up that space, or other, if a change in materials here from just straight siding, horizontal siding to perhaps like a shaker batten siding at that upper portion. I don't know, but anyway, again, more for you all to discuss.
Okay.
Yeah, we can definitely look into breaking that up. It was just trying to keep as much of the cost and ease of construction down as well.
Sure, and your comments about the building toward the southern aspect to capture solar makes a lot of sense, and that's a great feature for sustainability. But again, hopefully will be here for quite some time, and so living in the fourth dimension being time, right? We've got length, width, height, and time for this massing, and it's again at the corner. This will be there for a while. So again, maybe you all are okay with that, but just wanted to point that out.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Bradford?
I don't particularly have a problem with that. I get what Tim is saying with balance, but to me that's a little more modern, and there are homes that have that kind of window placement or bare spot, I'll put it that way. So it may not be as traditional as homes right now in Stoughton, but it's not like what they do with that house. It's not something that's going to stick out like a sore thumb either. I think it's fine also knowing that it's Habitat. I mean, I do know that you try and watch your costs as much as you can. And I'm assuming there are windows on the front and back of that building going into the bedrooms, or one of those sides, right? So this is just a lofting on the trusses, and yeah, I just think that's a very cool looking building. And, you know, for a low-cost housing, I think they've done a great job with the design.
Any other comments from commissioners? Commissioner
I'm just,
Farrell?
yeah, just.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Al.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the exterior architecture. I think the big thing that's going to stand out here is the 10-foot setback to the property adjacent to it. That's what's going to catch your eye
That's what I was just
when you
looking for.
see this house. I mean, when I
Yeah.
first looked at the lot, I was like, I couldn't picture a house there that close to that lot line. But so yeah, the exterior architecture I think is going to be secondary to the encroachment on the adjacent property.
All right. Alderperson Schumacher.
So like with the last school, with the school maintenance building, we had them try and break up that big wide space. I mean, otherwise maybe you could put a screen or something on it. I don't know, but it seems, so I'm assuming that roof is going to is an overhang on the wall just a little bit. I'm assuming. I mean, it's not just the siding is going to go right up and meet the eave soffit or something.
You
Okay,
can
yeah,
see
I
it on
see.
that
Got it.
elevation there, I think.
And I see that to keep the symmetry in the building. I wonder on this side if they, instead of just being a flat straight out, if they would just almost angle like a small shed roof on the end of there. And I think that would help to break up that big blank space.
I don't think it looked quite as modern architectural. You're talking about putting a shed on that side.
Not like I mean, I'm only talking like short, 2 feet. Like instead of continuing the plane going up, that it would just angle over a little bit. It's not
Yeah,
super
see it
useful,
drawing.
but,
Yeah,
right.
I get what they're trying to do, and that's
Yeah.
a very modern look. I don't know.
Do you have other models like this built already?
No, we do not.
Okay.
This is on.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm Steve Hanrahan, by the way, with Habitat. Appreciate your consideration for this. Key Architects has taken this from bare bones, no plan to this. I'm confident they could make some alterations if we need to. Clearly, it would be easier if we didn't have to do that, but, you know, we understand that. Sam, are you following what the suggestions are, and can that be done?
Yeah, I think we can look at changing up some materiality and look at doing something on that elevation to break up that mass of just horizontal lap siding.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I think what Alderperson Schumacher mentioned at the school building, they used colors. I think where they wrapped it, I think is what they called it, you know, kind of around the roof line. So it really wasn't any more material. It was just different colors for that section that really kind of broke up the monotony of it. To try to fit that particular building into a neighborhood, which is tricky to do. So, yeah, whatever you can come up with, I think would be appreciated.
Even a window, a decorative type, small, just to break up that mass, half moon or.
Octagon just up in the high corner, so it's not gonna interfere with furniture placement. Would break that up, but still continue with your style. And I think that's important, because that is a different look. Chris, can I ask you a question?
Yes. Yes, you can.
Okay, the buffer really does bother, in the back, is there a way to pull that? I'm looking at the style of this house. Could it be pulled more to the front and have less of the setback in the front from the street and allow for a little more separation from that property in the back? Because it is right up, I mean,
So, okay, so this is, I don't know that we can do anything about this currently because this is the SIP review and the setbacks would have already been done. This is what I would suggest if you guys are open to it. I think putting some kind of like buffer or something along the lines of that for the adjacent neighbor would be the suggestion that I would make. Do you know if there's already is there already a fence line or anything like that there?
Yeah, we have had discussions about that based on comments previously.
Yeah.
We're certainly open to that. We always do put in some kind of,
Yeah.
We don't like to put barriers.
Yeah.
We certainly can put some,
But like
bushes or trees.
yeah. So this is what I'm suggesting to you guys. We can't move the footprint. It was already pre-established. However, this is the SIP. You guys could ask for some kind of screening along that 10-foot area where the house is met up. Screening can be anything. It can be a fence. It can be, plantings. It could be anything that, the developer, normally, at least most ordinances, like, that's how the screening reads. So that's what I would suggest. And I agree, it's real close, and they're stepping off of their back porch area into that space. And so I would personally want some kind of screening up. So yeah.
Have you had any conversations with the neighbor?
Well, we've had the normal, I don't know what you call them officially, but we haven't heard any complaints from the neighbor on what we're planning to build.
Okay.
But
They didn't request,
Yeah.
they didn't request anything.
my understanding is
Yeah, they didn't.
rental or
And I don't
something like
remember if they were here for the public hearing.
not the one I was at, no.
I would suggest though, just some kind of buffer for the people living in the Humane Habitat house.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you guys okay with them just bringing me something and approving it, as long as it meets our buffer standards for code?
Buffer, when you use the word buffer,
Yeah.
I know like when I put in the fence, they had to have a 4-foot setback. I mean, so does the
I think
buffer
it's-
have a little more flexibility?
I would prefer probably plantings. I know I'm trying not to keep the cost low.
And so would we.
Yes. So I would say some kind of buffer that's plantings. Can we just leave it at that? Are you guys comfortable with that? So that's what I would suggest. And could we add that to the SIP then? So a buffer,
Some kind of.
a
yeah.
buffer that would be done with plantings, and we'll call it that, okay?
Okay, any other questions or concerns regarding anything else but the buffer? Okay, so I guess
Just
that
to
would,
break up that vertical space a tiny bit, that's it.
Okay, and then breaking up of the vertical space?
okay. So I would be looking for a motion on the resolution with those two items.
Excuse me, Mayor?
Oh, sure.
A quick question, and this is more for the applicant. I'm looking at page 19, which shows the buildable area. It looks like there is, on paper anyway, a couple feet of leeway that the structure could be pushed forward. However, there may be some issues with slopes of some of those sidewalks tying into the driveway. But just on paper anyway, it looks like there could be, the home could be pushed a couple more feet towards Stoughton Avenue. And would help create a little bit more buffer anyway.
I would
But
say even if it's 2 feet though, let's just ask for the plantings.
No, but 2 feet is 2 feet.
Yeah.
That's, visually it's
I
gonna
will-
look better even at 2 feet.
Samantha here, architect at Key. I will say that if we need to shift that slightly 2 feet, that we should be able to make that work. And from what I have from a site survey standpoint and what I can see on Google Maps, it does look like there's an existing fence. It doesn't look like it's in great shape, but I do think that a buffer of plantings would be nice on that side as well.
Yeah,
so.
it does not run the whole driveway. It's a partial fence, yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say the buffer just needs to follow the line of the building. It doesn't need to necessarily go all the way around the lot. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I think what we're looking at is, we have a resolution in there, and we have a couple things that we want to add to it. Do you have the language?
Yes, so I have a buffer done by plantings, and then breaking up of the vertical space, and then shifting the building if possible 2 feet. Which direction was it? 2 feet
Towards
West.
Stoughton Avenue.
west? Okay. I'm gonna put if possible, because just in case they get in there and there's like it was pushed back for utility reasons or something like that, we don't wanna.
All right, is everybody good with that? Okay, so I would entertain that motion then.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Bradford, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Schumacher. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 And any opposed? None opposed, that carries. I know you have an event scheduled for a groundbreaking. Or no, that's for the other property, for
Right.
Abel Court.
Exactly. I was gonna say, wait a second, I don't, yeah.
So-
We're partnering on this with Habitat International, and it's gonna be an ICF construction, so it's a big deal. It's very sustainable, very solid. It's a new concept for home building. They've used it a lot in other construction, so you'll hear a lot about it as
It'll be cool
time
to
goes
see
on.
it go up.
Sorry?
I said it'll be cool to watch it go
Oh,
up.
it's a lot of
Yeah.
fun.
Do you
Yeah.
know who maintains the lot?
Who does what?
Maintains the lot right now, mowing or whatever on the lot?
If you're asking me if it's being maintained properly, I haven't looked at it recently. We hire out with not a landscaper,
Okay,
a lawn mowing
I
company.
drove by today, it could
Okay.
use a mow.
I will get on that. We'll take care of that.
When do you
Yes.
anticipate starting?
We have a few more hoops to jump through on that partnership. We've got our plans set for the first 6 months of the fiscal year. We start July 1 fiscal year, so this will be reviewed after all this formal approval, and we'll get it on the schedule. I anticipate it'll start early calendar year 25,
Excellent.
and it'll take, 6 or 7 months to get it done. We're not the fastest builders in the world, but we'll get it done. Yeah, we do. Please come out and help. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very
All right,
much.
thank-
Really
Thank
appreciate
you
it.
both for being here, and thank you for Samantha for being online as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, item number 10. This one is to review proposed changes to multi-family residence. So let's see, what do you have in here, Chris?
Okay, so what I've done is I'm giving you guys these sheets. This has not been noticed, we're just talking about it. And then I'm hoping to bring it back to Plan Board and start the noticing process next time, right? So I want you guys, I kind of introduced, let you know why I was doing it the last meeting. I'm giving you guys the markups this time, and then I'll start noticing it. And if you have questions or you see something during, the process of reviewing and you want to see it added, feel free to reach out to me, or we can bring it up at the next Plan Board meeting when we're reviewing it. So I know everybody's tired because it's a long night, so I'm going to kind of go through this not super fast, but fairly fast. So essentially this is proposing taking the multifamily residential 10 and multifamily residential 24, which currently is in our ordinance, and using the very technical terms, smushing them together. So it's going to become we're just going to have multifamily residential, okay? So currently with the 2 multifamily residential, there's a max per unit, hence where the 10 comes from and the 24. The new multifamily residential will remove the units per acre and rely on developers meeting the minimum requirements of the district, such as setbacks, stormwater, parking, landscaping, and then I like to look at minimum floor space per dwelling unit size too. So we want a normal dwelling size unit. And what I've done is I actually did a really large spreadsheet and started looking at both of them. And so the setbacks and all of those things were based on those other 2 current zoning codes. So I have 2 sets on there. So the first one I gave you guys was my red line, and it is really hard to read, right? Because it's all of the markups. Plus I reformatted it so I could, with the way that I like to read stuff. So that's why some of the stuff looks like it's really marked up. It's still there, it's just either been moved or, again, we're smushing them together. So I'm gonna go ahead and skip the red line version, but it's there. I wanted you guys to see what it looked like because it's hard to read. And essentially, I'm gonna go through some of this, and I'll try to go through it fast. If you guys have questions, stop and ask me. You know, if you start looking at it and you're like, I want to see this added, this is the time to get this stuff added, right? And if we want to push it back, I mean, we can talk about it again at the next meeting. If we want to push it back a further time, that's fine. But I also we're seeing all of the stuff that needs to get rewritten. And so this is going to be a process that you guys, unfortunately, I'm sorry, that you're going to start seeing probably every meeting. So essentially we're looking at the multifamily residential district. It would be replacing and most likely showing up at 78-105 parentheses G. What we have is, so what you have in zoning districts is you have what is the permitted use, which is like you just can pull a building permit. And then you have the conditional use, which would come to you guys for review and approval. And of course, you guys are going to still review things like land divisions and rezones and all of that stuff. But that's what we're looking at. So if a site is currently zoned for multifamily residential, number 2 is what's permitted in that district, and they don't need a conditional use permit, okay? So the following are permitted: single family residence up to 6 houses, and the minimum lot size in multifamily residential, I even believe now, is essentially an acre. So just more of an FYI. And part of the reason too, we want to push, for example, single family homes into zoning for single family homes. So when we go to the conditional use, you're not going to see it anymore. Why? Because we want it in the single family home zoning district. So that right now in our zoning ordinance, it lists under every single residential something, and then it references other spots. We want to go in and change it so it matches the zoning district, so you're not looking to 14 different places essentially. So we have single family homes up to 6, twin homes, duplexes up to 8 units, townhomes up to 8 units per acre, and then multifamily apartments up to 10 units per acre. So, and then we have outdoor public recreational, public service utility, essentially utilities, right? Community living arrangements, 1 to 15 residents, mobile service support systems. In our ordinance currently, for some reason it breaks it down and it's utilities, and then it's a permitted use is solar, and then a conditional use is wind. I don't know why it did it. I just popped it up into it's a permitted use. It's a permitted use. It doesn't need to be by itself. It's a permitted use. So solar is a permitted use. A non-family residential household in the MR district shall be limited to 3 unrelated. This is just from my time at Whitewater and having people try to stick 15 people not unrelated in a home. I'm super paranoid about it. If you guys want to increase that, that's fine, but what we're looking at is yes.
Chris, what's the mobile service support structure? What is that?
That is a great question, because underneath that, I believe in the conditional use permit, it's cell towers is in that portion. So I can double check and look at the definition of it. So let me get that one.
Right.
And I apologize, because I marked this up probably 2 months ago, so I did probably read up all this stuff, but man, I tell you. So
Yeah,
I'll double check that, but I know that a cell server.
We redid the ordinance with that one recently. With
Okay.
cell tower stuff.
Okay.
With the attorney, so.
Okay. Do you know how recently it was?
Oh, that was, when did we do that?
In the
earlier
last
this
year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's restrictions on how close they can be to residential developments.
Okay. So
And a lot of it was federally driven because
Yeah.
of federal law changes.
And
Yeah.
cell service towers,
We'll be able to go back
Yeah.
and find our Attorney Dragney's notes on that.
okay, I can I can remove E.
I mean,
I
that's
feel
fine,
like it
just-
does conflict from what you think, so I
Right.
would, and again, this is why we're talking right now, instead of just noticing it.
And
Yeah.
that might be one where we've got, because we have an ordinance and a fresh one too, so.
Okay.
Maybe this one doesn't need to live in there.
Yeah.
I have an entire, I printed this out, and you're gonna hate it, because I am
No.
notorious with red pens, so.
No, I'm not gonna hate it.
Oh,
In
we
fact,
could have a
I
duel.
prefer that, so.
Right.
No, it's fine. That's what I prefer.
I'll drop it off tomorrow morning, because of course I forgot to bring it tonight, so.
Okay.
That would've been really helpful, though.
Do you have it digitally? You can email it if you can.
I gotta be driving around anyway,
Okay.
so let's just drop it off.
Okay. Okay, so then we go down to conditional use permits, and then it goes into anything above those thresholds becomes a conditional use permit. Community gardens, market gardens, community living spaces over 16 and plus, bed and breakfast, group daycares, external communication devices. I knew it was in there. So that's where I'm almost wondering if the mobile support structure or something is like, maybe it's my satellite, like on the side of my house versus, I don't know. I don't know that anybody's pulling a permit if they're just putting like, you know, yeah, so.
So you don't think we can eliminate conditional use permits? Because I know that was one of the goals of the previous city attorney.
No, you can't eliminate conditional use permits.
You can minimize how many you have.
You can, yes, and essentially what this district is for is like, so multifamily residential, like large scale multifamily residential, like what we saw with the Nygaard area, like that would be a conditional use permit. You guys would have a crack at it, and then we also have to have exactly what we're going to ask for in that, and so that's something to keep in mind.
I feel like what you're doing here is, you know, if the lot can hold it, they can build it.
Right.
Based on our setbacks and our standard zoning codes, and try to minimize the planned developments.
Yes.
Because once they start asking for planned development, they're not meeting them setbacks, so therefore it's not permitted.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you're saying here?
Yeah, we need to, so when I get a call from a developer, it seems like over the last 5 years, we've been doing planned developments, and it is difficult to track down sometimes. And really, we shouldn't be doing that. If we want to change the ordinance to meet those requirements, then we need to go in and change the ordinance and then apply it across the board to all the developments coming in.
Yeah, I feel like consistency could be a challenge under our current system.
Yes. I can just like, yeah, and it's just like, this is, yeah. So.
I mean, we heard it earlier tonight.
Yeah, yes. And the thing is when we get planned developments coming, the city needs something in return for those. Like, we want to see, you know, and especially that particular one, like, it's a visible area. We want to see that variation. We have at least one thing that's going to come as a planned development that is a legitimate planned development. But, you know, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So I'll
as far as like building heights, would that be in here too, or would that somewhere else?
Yeah, and I'm going to get to that, yes.
Okay.
So it is in here. So conditional use permits, list them out. Again, if you want to see other conditional use permits in this district, like things permitted in this district, you need to let me know. Permitted accessory uses, these are going to be garages. So principal use is like your house, accessory use is your garage and or shed. Just so you guys know. Temporary uses, I thought that was interesting that this was in here, and essentially it's addressing like when it's being built. So like, oh, it can have, you know, essentially it's like the contractor's, the contractor's project office, on-site real estate, sales office. Like, I thought that was great, kept it in there. So number 6 is kind of the meat of this area. So minimum setback regulations for multifamily residential districts. So this is across the board. If it's a permitted or conditional use permit, it has to meet these minimum requirements. Minimum lot size is 1 acre. Minimum lot width is 100 feet. Minimum front yard, street yard setback is 25 feet from right of way. And then it goes down the line. So we also have, for example, and I can read through all of them, but I'm not going to do that to you guys.
I feel like we have homework to do.
You do. And again, so this is your, yes, this is your ordinance, and if you see something you don't like, or you want me to research it, or you want to increase it or decrease it, and I mean, like, we need to be realistic about it, right? Because we do need multifamily residential, but we don't want to keep approving planned developments, right? So maximum height is 3 stories or 40 feet. No pavement to the parking area closer than 5 feet to the adjacent lot unless it's a documented joint driveway. The only one I saw, you know, and maybe this is, I need to pick somebody's brain about this, but minimum landscape surface ratio, and it had minimum gross density, and I think that was how it was applied, but we're getting rid of the minimum gross density, so I do need to like revisit 1 and 2 of J. Minimum buffers, that does reference another area. Minimum off-street parking stalls, which you probably just noticed was in that other planner's report that I used. And then we've got minimum lot coverage. Now, minimum lot coverage for 1 and 2 family, again, we don't really want to see 1 and 2 family in multifamily residential districts. You skip over to, B, essentially, multifamily, it needs to be reviewed by engineering staff and approved by the planning department and/or plan commission shall be required. So it has to meet our ordinance requirements. Principles, the principal standards set forth in the city erosion control plan has to meet all that jazz. So number 8 is minimum dwelling size per unit. If you guys, and I'm actually looking at you right now, lucky you. Yeah, I would like you to look through this and see if these are reasonable. I know that we had very strict standards when I was in Whitewater, but like we needed to make sure in the efficiency units you could put down a bed, right? Like because of the configuration. So we do have the, what if, go ahead.
Okay, so my question when I read that
Yeah.
is, okay, on new construction and whatnot, I see that are people who are remodeling some of the places in town going to be held to those same, because they could be increased.
Yeah.
But I'm worried that if the code gets increased above like the 500, 600, that then it might, yeah, it could be a problem for people purchasing, say we got some small
Totally.
homes.
So I would say that's an existing non-conforming structure as it sits right
So
now.
do we need to add that somewhere?
Well, that's, okay. All right.
Just asking.
Okay, no, it's great. So
That's why you two should
guys,
get together.
No, I'm just laughing. So
You want to get
So,
home.
about 2019-ish, existing non-conforming lots, structures, and uses change in state code. And it looks like most people, when they updated them, put it all in one section. It wasn't done like that here. It's peppered throughout. So it actually addresses it in the ordinance. It's just not super easy to find.
Okay.
But it is in there. So it would be considered an existing non-conforming. If it's like, I'm gonna remodel my house, it's only 500 square feet where it has to be 6. Unless you're adding an addition, and I'd be like, dude, you gotta add on the extra 100 feet if you're already doing the addition. We're not gonna be like, you can't remodel your kitchen because it is only 100 square feet. But essentially that's an existing non-conforming.
Some of it is unfortunately turning the big houses into duplex, and sometimes you don't meet.
There it is right there.
Yeah.
So in other words, if somebody comes in, they're like, I want to do a 2-flat and their house is only 800 square feet and they can't get,
Oh, yeah.
we don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We want,
So if they're changing the zoning, that would trigger the review?
Yeah. I mean, I'd be like, no, you can't.
Because they're trying to go from non-conforming, you can't change the zoning to.
You can't go from conforming to non-conforming.
Right.
You can go from non-conforming to non-conforming or non-conforming to conforming, but you can't go backwards. So, yes. And then the other one that I want you guys to look at, and we touched on it tonight, is number 9, multifamily residential facade shall incorporate at least 3 of the following design features. And then I list 3 design features that we can require when they're bringing their stuff in for the SIP. If you guys want to see more or less, you just need to let me know. I think they're all reasonable. Other considerations that you could add, I was thinking about this. Phil, I'm going to look at you for just a second. I apologize that I didn't give you warning. I know. What? So one of the things that I was considering is when, for example, so we have a multifamily residential going in. Do we have any language? I couldn't find it and I just wasn't sure, but I want it to be like concrete, tangible. We can require them to hook into existing trail systems or whatnot. Do we have something in writing currently?
There might be something in our park design guidelines.
Okay.
So you might want to float that to Tony.
So this is what I want to emphasize when we're talking about this, is there is a difference between, you don't know?
I don't recall.
Okay.
If not, we could amend that or reference the amended version or something.
I think we just need
Because
to,
that's the one thing we want to do is, we want to be able to give them not only the zoning code, but we want to give them the guidelines on the park so they know what the expectations are.
right, and I think that's where I want to make sure if we want to require that. So guidelines are different than ordinances. Guidelines are like, hey, can you please do this? Ordinances are like, you gotta do this. And so I think we, if you see things like that are gaps, that we want to say, if you're within X amount of feet of a trail, the developer needs to find a way to tie into it. You have to include bike racks. Those kind of things that's where this needs to be.
Yep.
And I think in the grand scheme, especially a multifamily residential that's requiring a conditional use permit, so you're talking really a lot of units at that point, like those are pretty minimal asks.
I think that, if I'm recalling, Tony should know, because I think there's some of the sustainability stuff that we added into the parks guidelines, like environmental corridors, and there may have been something in there, trail stuff that this might all mesh together. I'm not recalling, but yeah, that sounds like a good idea. That sounds great. If it's not there, making it all work together would be awesome.
And I think adding it right within this code,
We need it.
whether we have it in the
yeah.
other or not, to absolutely put it in there is.
Yeah, making it more than a recommendation. That's what I was
At their
asking
cost.
Rick
Yeah.
a few meetings ago, difference between recommendation and ordinances and all our other requirements.
One you can
what
get a
we- can we
ticket
give
for.
teeth?
Yeah.
One can be cited, and the other one you could just be lectured.
Right.
That's how I would define it.
Yes, and I like to have that backing to be like, hey guys, you're putting 92 units in, you're 500 feet from a trail system, you have to tie into it in your design. Like that's a nice thing to be like, no, you got to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and chances are, they're providing the financial resources and the impact fees to do it anyway.
Right.
So why wouldn't you just do it while you're grading?
Right.
Because then it's done.
And it helps them
Yeah.
sell their stuff, even though they might be like, oh, gosh, we didn't think of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to leave you guys with this right now. Just more of an FYI, I did go out throughout and Brett, you probably saw it. I went throughout the ordinance. I did miss one or two from the last one that I sent out, so you probably caught them. But anywhere that it was like 10, 20, 10, R10, 24, multifamily 10 and multifamily 24, I removed and put in a reference to multifamily residential. And then to follow up, because, and I don't want to, in an ideal world, we would have a brand new, great, shiny ordinance all at once, right? But we are not there. This does kick out of compliance for our downtown district, which will be the next one I will be tackling. And by, I mean, kick it out of compliance, it's already really conflicting. So, that is going to be my next shift, is I'm going to be looking at that, but it's being driven by this multifamily residential. But we also are going to be seeing multifamily residential. We all know this. Everybody here knows this. I like to get this taken care of for the upcoming developers so they can say, here's what you have to meet, guys.
Yeah, and that's consistent with what was in our comp plan. There was a blurb in there that said we really need to have some design guidelines. I think this gets us closer to that.
I do too. So again, feel free to reach out to me. Call me, shoot me a text, drop by the office if I'm around. I probably would be easier to drop by, honestly. If you have questions, we can get stuff added. If you guys don't think that this is enough time to review and you want to have a work session or something like that, let me know. I can go that direction. But I really tried to keep what was already in our ordinance and make it into this. So
I just have one thing, because I think when we went past this one, you mentioned it, is section 10G, that a non-family household in the MR district shall be limited to 3 unrelated persons. There was something, I want to say it was McFarland last year or 2 years ago, something, this just a light bulb went off, and I'm trying to remember why the
I
light
can-
bulb went off. But there
so-
was something happened there, and I think some neighbors had issues with something that maybe, I'm trying to remember the circumstance, so that's just something that, yeah, I guess I'll have to research, or if somebody recalls, or I'll have to look up.
How does that work with foster families?
So I unfortunately have a lot of that with foster families, but the unrelated, because of the fact of where I had to regulate. City of Whitewater, 10,000 students essentially is what we had, 10,000 for a community of 5,000 people. So foster families, that counted as related. If it was extended family, it counted as related. You know, so like if I'm, you know, if my house, even if I had students that were twins and siblings, they essentially counted as family. We were not going in and being like, you cannot live together. That's not how this works. If we have a high number of unrelated people living in a house, that is when I would go in and regulate it. Do I see this being a problem here? No. Is it a bad thing to have in your ordinance? No. You know, so that way if we do have problems, we have some kind of backing. 3 unrelated is pretty normal. You know, I'm like trying to think of how, you know, we had situations where we would have like maybe a husband and wife living together, and then like maybe a sister or somebody would come. That was considered related. So, and I can double check the definition here about what we consider related, but I know it included foster kids and yeah. I don't see this being a problem here, but it is not a bad thing to have in the ordinance, quite frankly.
And I was kind of thinking, you know, a adult family home circumstance perhaps, but I know there's something else in here farther, but what if it's like very small capacity?
Yeah.
You know, like 4 people or 5 people instead of, I think there's something referenced
So
in here
those
that
should,
has 16 people in it.
in theory, those should be they should be, so I don't want to get too in the weeds with this one because it gets weird. We had group homes in Whitewater that in theory, like exactly what we're talking about, right? But they were regulated by the state. And so we really, I don't know that we could, I don't want to speak out of turn, but we didn't pursue them, and I don't know that we could. And in fact, they never really told, most of those homes, the people that know about them are EMS services and whatnot, and it's because of just like, hey, this is what's going on. So like my fire and EMS chief knew all of these places, and if I had problems, be like, hey, do you know what's going on here? And he'd be like, yes, it's a state-run yada yada yada, and I was like, all right. So
First, we do have at least one sober house.
In Stoughton, I think we probably have more than that. Huh?
Those rehabilitation homes off of Nine.
I have one right by me on Prairie. So those are unrelated individuals, adults recovering from drugs, alcoholism, or returning from a prison type stay before they get out in the community. So those might be the only thing that I could see that might have, you know, multiple unrelated adults.
yeah. I don't, I think we need to dive more into this with the single family and duplex area. In theory, we shouldn't have a group home in a multifamily.
No, they're
Yeah.
usually single
It'll probably be
family.
zoned
That's a
like
good point.
institutional, or there might be some state statutes that allow it.
Yeah,
You know, so we'll have to cross-reference.
it gets, and I would almost rather have Rick here kind of talking about it, because it can get really weird what
Yeah.
you can and can't
See,
regulate with
it's
this
the only
stuff.
thing that popped into my head where I know of multiple adults in a house
Yeah.
that aren't related.
Yeah. So again, if you guys, you know, are you guys okay with the
Yeah.
3 unrelated? I think that that's reasonable. If you want to increase it to 4, you can. And historically, that's how I've always addressed it. I can double check the definition of family, but I mean, since the dawn of antiquity, I think it's like family is, and then it lists like
My guess is the only time you actually check on these is when you get complaints and have problems,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, we're finding that a lot of our ordinances are antiquated, and the CACP committee is going to go through and do some recommendations for updates, and then also recommendations of the appropriate committee or commission that should update their section. Obviously, this falls here. The other thing we want to do as part of that is we'd like to format it and have consistency in our formatting, which is not in my forte. Brett has done it on, for HR, for the Personnel Committee. We have other folks on other committees that are extremely talented. So I think, you know, we can utilize them as resources if they're willing to help us.
I truly welcome markups. I would rather get all of this vetted before we take it out and then find it, like, you know. So, yeah, I truly appreciate anything that you can provide, and then any guidance that you guys want to see, you know. And even if you ask something and then I do research and I'm like, okay, we can't regulate this, or we can, like, it's better to know that stuff. So.
All right, any questions on that? Otherwise, I guess we'll be talking about this maybe at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Any other future agenda items?
I believe the only other thing coming up is the second Habitat for Humanity. Most likely will be here, but they didn't really have enough information for us to send it. So.
And where are they located?
Oof.
It's
on Main.
Pine Street.
Oh.
Yeah, which.
Oh, that piece of property that
Yeah,
always
it's right
been
across
used?
from Jordan, so we'll talk to him, because we'll have to understand how deep he can be into the conversation. He has a property right across the street.
Okay.
So, but we'll see what they come back there. And I know he's met with them in the past, so hopefully.
I think it's going to echo a lot of the same, like what we saw in this one, is my understanding. But we haven't really gotten enough information in, and that's why it's not here.
Well, when they bought that property with the house and rehabbed the house on the far side, right? That was always meant to be some kind of low income housing, yeah. So that's good that they're getting on it.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
hopefully they'll have more projects in the pipeline.
Do you guys have anything you'd like to see from me at all? Anything? Okay.
And more than likely, you know, forward development group will be back we'll see how it goes for them at council, because we have the public hearing there. And then most of the rest of the developments are going to be starting. They're going to be pulling permits pretty quick for Magnolia anytime now, so they're ready to go. If you've been down there, a lot of the infrastructure is in. And then they started, foundation work is done on the second apartment unit out on 51 on the east side. And they're still pulling quite a few permits on the west side, as well as Lennar at Kettle Park West. So it's going to be a busy year. And the preliminary numbers from last year, we believe that our net new construction might be double of what it was the year before, based on what the appraisers gave us. Now, obviously, we have to go through and have the state, you know, confirm that, but we had them just do a quick once over of our property. So last year was an extremely busy year. So thanks to you guys, you know, there are a lot of projects got done. A lot of remodeling got done too, and you don't even see that with the building inspector and the building permits. Your office has just been
We are
swamped.
really busy. And that's the other thing. Next week, we're hoping to start getting, and I apologize for this taking so long, but we're really hoping to get this stuff up and running in iWorks. It's just been a lot, but we're hoping everything will be online, like, ideally, so.
Yeah, so we're looking at, you know, technology to make it more user-friendly for us and for the developers or homeowners to get their permits. But yeah, it's been extremely busy in the department, so, which is exciting.
It
And
is.
then if we can get the GIS person on board, that's going to help too.
I think it'll really help with just getting, so I might talk about it at finance tomorrow, but like really, we have a pile of CSMs right now, and getting those tied to parcels so the landowners can get on and see them is ideal. You know, getting that kind of stuff online, so like you as the landowner can be like, what is going on here? And then you know.
You wouldn't
So-
believe how many phone calls and walk-ins we get for people asking for stuff that they should be able to just find.
Yeah.
And it's not there yet. So once we get it there, I think that's gonna create some efficiencies.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So-
do see all the building permit things when I'm reviewing the financial reports.
It's
There's a
wild.
lot.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of people, I've had people that they, price points and interest rates and everything else,
They do better by remodeling the home if they're just looking at doing it for safety or,
Yeah.
you know, things like that to make it comfortable for senior living or that kind of thing, so. And some of the lots are pretty big, so to add on a little bit of space and make your first floor accommodate is cheaper
It
than
is.
moving right now, so.
Yep.
And they love Stoughton, and they can't find a new house in Stoughton, don't wanna leave Stoughton,
It's a nice community. It really is.
yeah.
All right, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Caravello, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We are
No, we wanna
adjourned.
stay here all night.
A while longer.